It's time. We got to keep going. We have to find out what happens with the witch. Dakin's about to find a way to destroy the witch. Let's keep going. Chapter 18, The Witch Ball. Her hands and arms, even with the magic of Zog's breath to strengthen them, were beginning to ache dreadfully. She doubted very much if even the Lithy Pool water could save her life if she fell. How long could she hang on here? And if she made any move, would the witch now carry out her threat to tread on her fingers and make her let go? Dakin knew there was only one hope. It was terribly dangerous. "I'm going to fall," she cried out suddenly. "Fall, then," said the witch coldly. "It will please me to watch it." "But you forget, Master of the Mountain," cried Dakin. "You forget the ring." "Ah!" hissed the witch. "Then you know where it is." "Of course I know. Get me up and I'll tell you." "Tell me first." "No, pull me up, and I'll not tell you where the ring is. I'll get it for you." The witch hesitated, and then she took hold of Dakin's wrists in her clammy hands and lifted her back onto the ledge. Then, to Dakin's astonishment, she let her go. "Stand still," she hissed. "Look." She lifted the witch ball by its string, which hung from her arm, and slowly passed it to and fro in front of Dakin's eyes. "Look into my witch ball," she said. But Dakin did not look. Another voice, a voice she had heard only once before, spoke inside her head. "Do not look at it," said the voice. "If you do, you will become helpless. Look into the witch's eyes." Dakin gasped. The voice was the same she had heard in her sleep the morning the mountain had called her. With all her strength of her will, she kept her eyes away from the glowing greenish ball swinging back and forth before her face. She fixed them instead upon the two dark circles through which the witch's eyes glittered. "Are you looking at the ball?" asked the witch in a low, monotonous voice. "Yes," said Dakin. "Then tell me the truth about the ring." "Do you know how to answer?" asked the voice in Dakin's head, and strangely, Dakin did. "It is in the Lithy Pool," said Dakin clearly. The witch gave a long, drawn-out hiss and seemed to shrink into her colored tatters. She let the witch ball fall from her fingers. It was still swinging to and fro, and the sudden jerk as it dropped to the end of its string made it fly against the cliff wall. It shattered. But the sound was not just the clash of thin glass, it was an explosion, with a blinding green flash and a puff of evil-smelling green smoke. The witch reeled back and would have fallen if she had not clutched at Dakin. "My witch ball! My witch ball!" she shrieked. Then she turned to Dakin in wild fury. "See what you've done! You'll pay for this! You'll pay!" "Yes, I'll pay," said Dakin quickly. "I'll pay by getting you the ring." Chapter 19, Doom. The witch stared at her, her breath coming in gasping wheezes. She no longer looked sure of herself, and Dakin guessed that part of her power had left when the witch ball smashed. "Yes, the ring," she whispered at last. "Quickly, we must get it quickly before day comes. Come here." With a quick, jerky movement, the witch pulled Dakin up against her and threw her ragged cloak around her until she was completely covered by it. Almost overpowered by being so close to the source of evil, Dakin nearly fainted and did not know what happened next. But it seemed only a few seconds later that the smelly cloak was whisked off again. She found herself standing in Croak's cabin. It was very dark in there. The moon was on the other side of the mountain, but a trace of reflected starlight came through the windows and glittered faintly on the surface of the Lithy Pool. The witch seemed oddly nervous and agitated. "Now," she hissed, "be quick." "You have to give me some light," said Dakin, thinking furiously. The witch made some sharp, jerky passes in the air with her hands. A very faint light appeared in the cabin, and Dakin immediately gave a quick look around for Croak, but couldn't see him. He was probably hiding. Almost at once, the light faded again. She heard the witch muttering curses and saw her moving her hands as before, only more frantically. And suddenly Dakin realized what was wrong with her. The nearness of the Lithy Pool was sapping what little power she still had. To stand beside it like this, without her witch ball to protect her, was exhausting her. The faint green light appeared again, weaker than before. "There," said the witch, and now she seemed to be gasping for breath. "Go in and get it. If you cannot, nothing will save you, nothing." "I must have more light," said Dakin, for now an idea was forming in her mind. "I need enough light to shine down through the water." "The pool has no bottom," hissed the witch. "That is known." "Nonsense," said Dakin, trusting that the witch's natural fear of the pool would have prevented her checking herself how deep it was. "It's quite shallow. By day I could see the ring twinkling on the bottom." "What? How did it get there?" "I threw it in myself yesterday," said Dakin carelessly. The witch gave a snarl of rage, but she could do nothing except exert every effort to brighten the light. She muttered a spell and worked and labored over it until her whole crooked body seemed to be jerking and writhing. At last she succeeded. A series of bright green flashes lit up the cabin, throwing the witch's angular, twisting shadow onto the walls. "Hurry, hurry!" shrieked the witch. Dakin did hurry. She dared not stop to think about the danger. With one hand she reached for the witch's dark glasses, snatched them off as before, and threw them into the pool. At the same moment, with the other, she pulled off her white stocking cap and waved it in front of the witch's eyes. The witch screamed and hid her eyes. Dakin knew from the last time that in a matter of a second the witch would have made another pair of glasses to protect her from the dreaded whiteness. But in that one instant, Dakin got behind her and pushed with all her might. The witch tottered for a moment on the brink of the pool and then, with a horrible shriek, fell in. There was no splash. The waters opened to receive her and closed over her again. Dakin's feet were soaked by the wave that came out all around the edge. In the last of the magic light, Dakin saw what Drakhamag had meant. The witch, the evil master, did indeed go poof. In eerie silence, a cloud of green smoke puffed out of a little whirlpool, which was all that was left to show where she had gone. Then the water settled down to glassy calm again in the peaceful starlight. Oh, let's keep going. Chapter 20, Trolls. Suddenly, everything was different. It was impossible to say how, but it was as if some great weight had been lifted off everything. Dakin picked herself up and looked around. The smoke was thinning and blowing away in the breeze. The stench was still there, but growing less every moment. The air seemed to beat like a pulse. Dakin felt overwhelmed with some feeling that might be called happiness, for lack of some stronger word. She simply stood there, breathing lightly, enjoying this feeling in every part of her. Something touched her knee. She looked down. A little man stood there, and another, and a third. Their faces in the moonlight looked familiar. "It's me, Og," said the first voice in a voice of wonder and joy. "And look, I'm free! And I! We are all trolls again, ourselves, as we used to be. Oh, what did you do? We thought we were to die, and instead we are restored." Dakin crouched down, and the three brothers, sad imprisoned gargoyles no more, but flesh and blood, little men, stood close beside her, looking shyly and marveling into her face. She touched each one gently, and each one in turn blushed deeply and murmured, "Oh, oh, my little friends," she said softly, "I'm so glad." And suddenly they all flung themselves on her and hugged and kissed her. "But how? What? How?" they all asked breathlessly, and Vog added, "We were coming back very, very slowly, thinking we were living our last moments, when suddenly there was a loud noise, and the next minute we were standing here." Dakin told them all that had happened. They stared at her. "How brave," murmured Zog. "Oh, nonsense," said Dakin. "I simply had to, and after that strange voice spoke inside my head, it wasn't so difficult." "But that voice must have been the voice of your own thoughts," said Og. "No, not at all. It was nothing to do with me. I'm sure of that." You say it was the same voice that called you to come to the mountain? Said Vogue slowly. Yes, I'm sure it was the same. I heard it in my sleep. And afterward you saw the mountain nod. Yes. The three brothers looked at each other. I wonder, said Og. It couldn't be, said Vogue. Are you certain of that? Said Zog. What are you talking about? Asked Dakin. But they wouldn't tell her. I wish our brother Gog were here, said Zog. Suddenly Vogue jumped up. Gog will be like us. The spell is broken. He will be a living troll again, he cried. What will he do? Asked Dakin. Well, surely he'll come back. This mountain was our home in the good days before the evil one came. Well, he's got a long way to come, said Dakin. Meanwhile, I wish you'd tell me what you were talking about before, about the voice. We were probably wrong, said Zog. And then he pointed through the window. Look, the moon is setting. It will soon be morning. Let's sleep. Oh, how lovely it will be to sleep again. We haven't slept for 200 years. The trolls lay down in the cabin then and there, yawning and stretching, and in a moment they were all snoring blissfully. Now Dakin had time to look for old Croak. All through the rest of the night she called and searched for him. She turned over every leaf, groped into every shadow. She even lay down by the pond and reached her arms in as far as they would go, stirring the water and calling all the time, Croak, Croak, where are you? Nothing. The dawn crept across the meadow. The first bird notes sounded, and in a few minutes, as if those first awakened birds had realized that all was changed, every living creature in the meadow and wood seemed to burst into song. As the sun began to flood the mountain, Dakin took a last look around. She still felt that powerful joy underlying her awful disappointment that Croak had vanished. Nevertheless, tears poured down her cheeks. Oh, Croak, she sobbed, don't be dead. I can't bear it if you're dead. Croak, or rather Ravik, had been turned into a frog 200 years ago. When the witch's death broke the spell, Croak might have changed back into a man, a 200-year-old man. He would die at once from old age. But then, where was his body? And if it worked like that, why weren't the brothers old? But trolls do live longer than people and don't age in the same way. At last Dakin got up. It was no use sitting here crying. She had to find Gog and get the Ring of Kings back to the palace. She wished she felt more excited about seeing the prince, who she felt sure was destined to be her husband. She had never seen him, but of course he must be tall and handsome and so on, because who ever heard of a prince who wasn't? Nevertheless, she really felt, as she climbed up the chimney, that she'd rather have seen her dear Croak at that moment than the handsomest prince on earth. She's got a good friend in Croak, don't you think? Yep, that's important. Well, we're going to stop there for this week. More on the adventure next week. Thanks for tuning in.